Superman was locked in a brutal fight with both Zod and Faora, and despite his incredible strength, the sheer coordination of his enemies was wearing him down. Fighting two highly skilled Kryptonian warriors at once was no small task, and Zod knew it. As the clash continued, Faora coldly asked how far they would push this battle, to which Zod replied with certainty, "As far as necessary." He was confident that Superman would not be able to endure much longer, reminding Faora that while Kal-El was powerful, he was untrained. Another voice entered the battle. It was Wonder Woman. She stepped forward, remarking that while Superman might not have been trained, only fools would challenge him speaking Kryptonian. She declared that Superman was hers. Zod was almost amused, noting the effort it took to learn their tongue, and challenged her to prove what an Earth woman was capable of. Without hesitation, Wonder Woman joined the fight. The battle escalated into chaos. Superman quickly rejoined. He called out to her, asking where she needed him. With clarity, Wonder Woman ordered him to take Faora out of the fight. Superman seized Faora by the arm and said, "Come with me. I'm not going to hurt you." But Faora responded coldly, warning that his mercy would be his downfall, and struck him. Before the blow could land fully, Wonder Woman intercepted her, locking Faora's fist mid-air and boldly declaring that they would not lose. Superman turned his attention to Zod, advising Diana to use her lasso, but she shot back in frustration that if she had it, she would have already, telling him to focus on his own fight. As Superman grappled with Zod, the general's tone shifted. Zod admitted he did not truly wish to kill Kal-El, as almost all of Krypton was gone, and destroying him would feel like losing their home all over again. He even offered Superman the chance to join him, though he already knew the answer. Zod acknowledged the House of El's refusal to betray their principles, just as Jor-El, his father, had refused. He then declared, "But I will not let you turn me from my purpose." He wrapped his hand around Superman's neck, squeezing with terrifying strength. He called out to Wonder Woman. Diana, holding Faora at bay, warned him that if he continued, he would also be dead a moment later, and she meant it. Zod's eyes flared with heat vision. He then proposed another path. "Perhaps, but there is another way. Take him, and we will go. No one dies, not today." After a pause, she threw Faora aside and agreed to Zod's terms. Superman protested, unwilling to retreat, but Diana steadied him in midair, insisting that this was not a loss but a strategic retreat. No one dies, not today. Later, Zod and Faora regrouped at a decommissioned U.S. atomic test site in the South Pacific. The place, abandoned since 1963, now served as the staging ground for their true plan. Together, they worked on constructing a gateway to the Phantom Zone. Faora revealed that retrieving the final component had been difficult since it was well guarded, but Zod dismissed the effort as irrelevant compared to achieving the objective. With the last piece in place, they could complete the lens. Zod pressed her, asking if everything was prepared with the Phantom Zone. Faora, slightly insulted, told him not to question her again. She had done her part, and their allies would be ready once the gate opened. Zod then says, "I do know, Faora. I trust no one so much as you. This world, this sleeping world, soon to wake up. To Zod." Meanwhile, Superman and Wonder Woman made their way to Mount Etna in Italy. The battle had left Superman battered, and Diana noticed his arm, but he brushed it off, reminding her that while he lacked divine blood, Kryptonian physiology allowed him to heal quickly too. She pressed further, sensing there was more on his mind. Finally, Superman admitted what was weighing him down. He told her that before they had become a couple, he hadn't considered how his choices might affect her. But now, facing Zod and Faora, beings as powerful as himself, he found his thoughts consumed not with defeating them, but with protecting her. The fear made him wonder if their relationship was weakening their ability to do their real work. Diana listened carefully and answered with honesty. If she had believed that their bond made them weaker, she wouldn't be with him at all. She admitted she had asked herself the same questions, but had come to a different conclusion. That they were each other's shelter in the storm. To question that bond would unravel everything. She reaffirmed her commitment and reminded him that there was still work to be done. At the Forge of Hephaestus, Wonder Woman stood before her brother, asking if the armor she had requested was finally finished. Hephaestus replied that of course it was finished. He always delivered what he promised, but he was curious. Since she had originally told him it was for one type of enemy, and now it seemed the purpose had shifted. Not for a monster, but for two very different opponents, trained fighters who used reason as much as brute force. Diana confirmed it, explaining they weren't just fighters, but highly skilled military minds. Hephaestus muttered that they already sounded smarter than her, and he couldn't resist reminding her that the last time she was here, she managed to anger Apollo. Gods excel at many things, he noted, but the one thing they never failed at was holding grudges. Superman asked if Apollo was still god of the sun. Hephaestus said of course he was, to which Superman calmly replied that in that case, he'd be fine. But his confidence slipped when he turned to the topic of Zod and Feora. Their senses, he said, were just as sharp as his own. Wonder Woman backed him up, stressing that losing the element of surprise was a huge tactical disadvantage. Hephaestus, unfazed, raised his hammer and said he had an easy answer for that. Meanwhile, Zod and Feora had completed their work. At the atomic test site in the South Pacific, they stood before the gate to the Phantom Zone they had labored to finish. Zod declared that it was ready, and Feora suddenly sensed danger. She cried out to him, but it was too late. Two beams of light slammed into Zod, exploding on impact and sending him crashing to the ground. Feora rushed to him in a panic, calling him her love, but he was more stunned than injured, demanding to know how it was possible he hadn't detected the attack. Superman answered, "You know, Zod, that's pretty much the idea." Together with Wonder Woman, he emerged, both clad in new armor forged by Hephaestus. A flashback revealed Hephaestus explaining the secret. "I designed this chariot to allow me to move around the world without the eyes of Olympus watching me everywhere I go. Strong weapons, too. If you wish to use it, it's yours." With the help of the chariot, the two of them confronted Zod and Feora. Still weakened, Zod ordered Feora to take Wonder Woman first. He predicted Kal-El would instinctively protect her rather than come for him, showing his contempt by calling Superman weak. Feora agreed, though with her own arrogance claiming she could handle them both without his help. She launched herself at Diana, mocking her for returning to battle with nothing more than jewelry. Wonder Woman stood her ground, declaring it was not jewelry, and that Feora may have trained as a soldier, but she had been trained by War himself. The clash erupted instantly. Wonder Woman managed to twist Feora's head away, just as the Kryptonian unleashed her heat vision. Feora responded with a brutal punch to the face that left Diana bleeding. She taunted her to call Superman for protection. Wonder Woman gritted through it, declaring that Feora had miscalculated. She didn't need Superman to beat her, and he knew it too. While they clashed in the sky, Superman took on Zod. He caught the general midair, holding him in place and told him it was over. The gate would not be opened, and Doomsday would never leave the Phantom Zone again. But Zod laughed at his naivete. The monster was never the point, he revealed. Doomsday had only been a tool shoved through the barrier to weaken it enough so Zod could escape. He had no intention of dragging that mindless destroyer into the world he had plans for. Zod had made a deal, and he was a man of his word. Feora and he weren't the only residents of the Phantom Zone who seek a better world. Superman had no time to process it as Zod retaliated violently, slamming his knee into Superman's face, leaving him bloodied. The battle spiraled into an exchange of brutal blows. Superman struck back, but Zod answered with equal ferocity. Wonder Woman and Feora fought with the same savage intensity. Diana headbutted her opponent hard enough to draw blood. Both pairs were locked in even-matched duels. The battlefield had turned into a storm of fists, heat vision, and sheer determination. Superman landed heavy blows on Zod, only to receive them back with equal force. Zod then reminded Superman of his earlier warning. "I told you before I did not wish to kill you, Kal-El. We Kryptonians are too few, but you push me too far. This is your final warning. Leave or die." Superman just says, "We can't do that." Wonder Woman declared that they had sworn to protect this world. Feora mocked them both, astonished at their resilience. After taking 100 blows, she wondered how they could still stand, promising that they would break them eventually. Superman glanced at Diana and asked if 100 blows seemed like enough. She agreed. They had taken 100 blows, but they had endured every single one, and still they stood. They reached for each other, their hands locking. Wonder Woman says, "Here, have them back." As their armor reacted, it unleashed a massive release of energy, tearing their armor apart in a dazzling blast that sent both Zod and Feora crashing down into the sea below. The detonation stripped away the divine armor forged by Hephaestus, but it had done its work. Superman admitted that the blast had taken the fight out of their opponents, giving credit to Diana's brother for knowing what he was doing. Wonder Woman agreed, but remained sharp, reminding him that they needed to move quickly. If Zod and Feora healed as fast as Superman did, they would not stay down long. Superman proposed taking them to the Fortress of Solitude, explaining that he had already reset the passcodes to the cages so there would be no escapes this time. Far above them, on Olympus, Apollo and Strife had been watching the battle unfold. He asked Strife how far he had to go with these two. He complained that despite given the gifts from the gods, they still hadn't finished the job. Strife admitted she was enjoying the spectacle, the drama of it all, the way the two had to hold hands to trigger their weapon. What exactly the kind of entertainment she thrived on? Why not let it play out and see what happened next? Apollo was not amused. He confessed that he had already interfered more than he intended, secretly accelerating Zod and Feora's power, but he had grown impatient. Strife, of course, suggested being even more direct. After all, what was the point of revenge if no one knew you were behind it? An epic war between gods and all of them might be worth it in her eyes, claiming she'd probably be into it. Apollo considered her words for a moment, then agreed and made his move. From the heavens, a concentrated beam of sunlight burst down through the clouds, striking into the sea where Zod and Feora had fallen. Clark turned to Diana and asked what it was, and she answered, "Apollo." He understood what that meant. From the water, Zod and Feora rose again, but this time they were different. The sunlight had supercharged them, and their bodies glowed with lethal power. Their already overwhelming strength was now magnified into something terrifying. Zod declared that this was the end, and Feora finished his thought, calling it the end of everything. Superman admitted that they were right. He turned to Wonder Woman and told her to go, to bring the League, while he held the two off as long as possible. But Diana refused flatly. There was no time, she said, and he could not hold them both alone. They were too powerful. The only chance was to stop them here and today. Clark accepted the reality. "All right, let's do it." Then, side by side, they charged back into the fight. High above, Apollo watched with satisfaction. A smile crept across his face. "Well, look at them go, aggressive. And that alien is the price you pay. Let the name of Apollo echo through your mind as you drown in your own blood." Later, the battle finally reached its breaking point. Superman and Wonder Woman lay beaten, battered, and bleeding on the ground. They had fought with everything they had, but the toll was undeniable. Feora, standing over them, asked if it was time to end it now. Zod, however, calculated otherwise. Killing them would take too much time, and even in their broken state, the two were difficult to finish off. Their window to use the Phantom Zone was closing. They needed to move quickly. Feora pressed him on where they should take them, and together they carried their unconscious bodies through the sky. Zod pointed to one of Earth's primitive nuclear fission power plants. If they placed Superman inside the core, it would cut him off from solar energy, leaving him unable to heal, while the radiation itself would poison Wonder Woman. Feora approved, satisfied with the plan. After leaving them inside their reactor, Zod and Feora returned to the gate. Zod declared the time had come. Originally, he had intended to use the reactor's energy to power the gate, but Apollo's intervention had changed everything. The gift had given them the strength they needed, and the reactor was no longer necessary. Feora admitted that she didn't know how that happened. She had thought they were lost, but Zod waved off speculation, saying he would reflect on it later. For now, their mission came first. Together they activated the gate. What emerged was staggering. An army marching forward. Feora's eyes lit with triumph as she recognized what was coming through. Warworld. They had done it. They flew inside with pride, Zod declaring that they would take their rightful place at their head and lead them to their new world. Meanwhile, inside the reactor, both Superman and Wonder Woman regained consciousness. Bloodied and weak, they struggled to even speak. Diana asked if he could see their enemies through the walls of the reactor, but Clark admitted he could not. Here was lead everywhere, blocking his vision. Still, he knew what Zod was doing. They were opening the Phantom Zone, and it was not just doomsday waiting beyond it. The gate was enormous. It had to be, for an army. Diana, barely holding herself upright, bled heavily as she whispered that they had to stop them, maybe call the League and warn them. Superman, equally broken, reminded her their communicators had been destroyed. But then, he remembered something. Her sword. He asked if it was true what she once told him, that it could split an atom. Diana, pulling it forth with shaking hands, admitted it was said to be possible. She had never tried, but Hephaestus never lied. If he said it could. But she asked him why. Superman explained that they were inside a reactor core surrounded by uranium-235 atoms. Even though it was turned off, the potential was still there. If they split just one atom with her sword, the chain reaction would trigger an atomic explosion strong enough to collapse the Phantom Zone gate. Diana hesitates, pointing out she couldn't see atoms, couldn't possibly know where to strike. Clark continues, I could guide you. We do it together. She then asked the question neither wanted to face. Can we survive this? He admitted honestly that he didn't know. Then he asked if it even mattered. Diana looked at him, bleeding but unbroken, and said, No. But here is your answer. We could not do this apart. We are better this way. The two of them gripped the sword, one hand each. Superman grew quiet for a moment before confessing, I love you. Diana, even in pain, couldn't help but smile, replying simply that of course he did. With that, they drew the blade downward. The sword split the atom, unleashing a chain reaction that detonated the core. A massive atomic explosion tore through, a mushroom cloud rising into the sky. At the heart of it all, at the epicenter of the blast in the South Pacific, Superman shielded Diana with his cape, taking the brunt end of the explosion to protect her, leaving himself nearly destroyed. When the dust cleared, Wonder Woman was the first to wake, grasping for breath. She sat up, disoriented, and then turned in panic to Clark. He was lying motionless, unconscious, his body burned and battered far worse than hers. Shaken and disoriented, she asked herself aloud what they had done. She moved slowly through the devastation and then pulled herself out of the massive crater the explosion had left behind. Burned trees surrounded her, everything charred and lifeless. As she stumbled forward, she discovered a fighter jet, half buried in the dust and rubble. Weak but determined, she managed to force it open. With the last of her strength, she pushed a button inside. A missile fired upward, cutting through the heavy dust cloud that blanketed the sky. Then the missile's trail created a hole in the sky, allowing sunlight to pierce down onto the wasteland. The rays broke through at last, shining directly onto Superman's body, bathing him in the once source of power he needed most. Diana, her strength spent, collapsed onto the ground as the light reached him. Superman, barely clinging to life, starts to move again with Wonder Woman's help. The sun's energy trickles back into him just enough to bring him to consciousness. But before he can react, three ghostly figures armed with guns appear and surround Diana. Confused, she barely has time to register what's happening before they open fire, blasting her into the crater Superman was in. Hovering above, ghostly figures keep their weapons aimed, but Superman, weak as he is, musters the strength to fire his heat vision and destroy their guns. The ghosts glance at each other silently, then vanish into thin air, leaving nothing behind. Barely able to keep himself upright, Superman crawls forward on his hands and knees, his voice rasping as he calls out to Diana. Wonder Woman, bruised and exhausted, reaches for him, assuring him she's still there, though badly hurt. Together they piece together what just happened. The atomic explosion they triggered worked. Zod and Faora had been sealed back into the Phantom Zone, but the ghostly figures were something else entirely, something neither of them understood. They appeared and attacked without warning. Superman pulls her into his arms despite his own failing body, insisting that they need to leave while they can, since neither of them is strong enough to survive another fight. Wonder Woman acknowledges this grim truth, admitting that she isn't even sure she can still fly. Superman refuses to accept fate, telling her that they won't die in a hole. If they work together, they might reach above the clouds and into the sunlight where his strength could return. With what little power they have left, they take off, holding each other tightly, straining against gravity and pain. They break through the suffocating dust clouds into open skies, and the sunlight hits them hard. Superman screams in agony. The sunlight, usually his source of strength, burns him now, his cells overloaded from the explosion's radiation, absorbing too much, too fast. Still, he forces himself to endure. Wonder Woman urges him to seek help, but he insists on taking her somewhere she can heal first. He considers Olympus, but Diana immediately rejects the idea. Apollo, the god of the sun himself, had attacked them directly. He thrived in shadows despite his domain, and going to Olympus would only put them in more danger. Instead, she asks to be taken to Hestia, once a healer, someone she trusts. Despite his agony, Superman forces himself onward, determined to get her to safety. Wonder Woman pleads with him to stop for his own sake, but he won't listen and rockets away with her in his arms. Landing in Chelsea, London, Superman staggers as he delivers Diana into Hestia's care. Barely able to speak, he begs Hestia to save her life. Hestia, horrified by Diana's condition, ushers them inside. Admitting she'll do her best, though she admits she doesn't know if she can treat Superman since he isn't from Earth. Superman brushes it off. His only concern is that Diana survives. Wonder Woman, lying weakly as Hestia places a hand on her head to steady her, tells Superman to go, calling him a fool for staying. Superman insists it's his fault. Zod and Faora were his people, his responsibility. Diana, however, refuses to let him drown in regret. She reminds him she made her own choices, and she would live with them, and that he must live with his own. When Superman tries to say more, she cuts him off and reassures him that she already knows what he wants to say, and that they'll be together again soon. They share a moment of quiet understanding before he finally leaves her to rest. Superman retreats to the Fortress of Solitude, wounded and processing everything. He commands the fortress to increase security to maximum and adjust solar input as his body struggles to repair itself. Meanwhile, Hestia makes a choice of her own. She pulls out a pendant, an artifact she had sworn never to use again. The very reason she left Themyscira. Holding it in her hand, she hesitates, but Diana urges her forward, reminding her that the past wasn't her fault. Whatever happened, Hestia didn't deserve it. With resolve, Hestia begins the ritual, begging for the god's blessing in this desperate hour. As Superman lies in his chamber, his body slowly repairing itself under controlled solar energy, Wonder Woman rests while Hestia channels the pendant's healing power into her. For the first time since the brutal battle, both heroes find themselves able to breathe, their bodies finally given a chance to heal. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel.